Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast,
where we explore natural, homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Parenting Coach, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my 3 wildlings and the Papa Bear in our fixer-upper on the beach. This is episode 31, and today I'm here with Desirae Endres talking about contentment. Desirae is a mom, wife, host of the Minimalist podcast, and a former classroom teacher turned online educator. Her goal is to give moms the tools they need to dive into the version of realistic minimalism that fits their family best and live an intentional life focused on what matters most to them. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. Are you supporting the work you believe in through Patreon? For as little as $1 a month, you can do your part to create the world you want to live in by supporting the people doing work that make a difference. Feed what you want to see grow at patreon.com/sagefamily. This adventure of the week was an owl prowl. We read the Owl Moon book and then met up with a group of families at sunset led by a naturalist who guided us through dissecting owl pellets. Our owl ate a baby bunny, which our guide assured us is an exciting and rare find, and then silently hiking the forest trails in search of hunting owls. At the end of the night, we never did see an owl, but that's why I love the word adventure so much. It's not about a destination or a goal or an outcome when your intention is simply to have an adventure. An owl wasn't found, but an adventure definitely was. If you want to see photos and videos of this adventure, then head on over to Sage Parenting on Instagram and follow along. Today, Desirae Endres is joining me to share a conversation on contentment. We connected on Instagram a while back. She's a good follow if you're not already, and have been chatting and virtually hanging out there together ever since. I was recently a guest on her podcast, Minimalist, and I'm so happy she is here to share a conversation on contentment with me. Welcome, Desirae. Now, tell us your story. Who are you?
Okay, so I'm Desirae, like you said, and I am so excited to be chatting with you today and to be on your podcast because I've really loved listening to your podcast. So thank you again for having me on. But what my story kind of starts, about a year and a half ago, actually. I was a new mom, and to now a toddler, I guess almost 2 years because she's almost 2 now. And I was just really overwhelmed by everything around me. And I didn't realize that, I think that comes with the territory with new motherhood, but I didn't realize that a lot of that had to do with physical clutter. I'm the type of person that in the past, I never really thought physical clutter bothered me. I kind of lived in it all of my life. And I'm a messy person, so I never really thought that was an issue. But basically at the time, I was a teacher, a public school teacher. I never really loved that job. It really overwhelmed me. So I went part-time so I could be home with my daughter part-time. But then I picked up 2 part-time from home jobs. So I was just doing a lot. And, new motherhood came. I had some postpartum anxiety. And there was just a lot going on. And my husband and I stumbled upon the Minimalist documentary, which really appealed to us. And right away we started decluttering. We were both teachers. He's still a teacher, but we dug into decluttering our whole home on our spring break. And it was like a huge deep dive into decluttering, and we were both in it together. And since then, just so much has changed from that. I've gotten to this point where I can say that minimalism really changed my life, but it's not just the decluttering. And I like to talk about the deeper stuff because having a clearer physical space is what really helped me kind of dive in deeper to intentional living. And that's really what I talk about a lot. I do talk about decluttering and minimalism as well, but you can find me, like you said, on my podcast now, talking about all those things that have really changed my life.
Yes, I love how like the minimalism in the context of stuff is often the gateway into that intentional
Yeah.
living space, which I still call minimalism, but like minimalism with my time and with people and with money and with energy and just all those other realms of life.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's start with our homes. We're going to start with the most practical application of contentment, and I want to share an exchange I had with someone online recently. I had posted a picture of some corner of my home. Oh, it was my hammock on my deck, which is my happy place, and asked people to share what their happy places are in their homes. And I got some lovely responses that were fun to hear about. But one person said, "No happy place in this house, but I'm hopeful that we will someday," or something like that. And of course, because I'm me, I gently challenged her a bit by responding, "What is your happiest place in your home?" And she replied, "Like I said, no happy place here." So I followed up with, "Okay, every corner of your house is awful, but if you had to rank every area of your home from best to worst, there would be one area at the top of the list that is the least awful, or the happiest place in your home. What is that for you?" And sadly, I got no response. But that exchange stayed on my mind for a bit as I thought about why it's so hard for us to feel content with our physical spaces. What do you think?
Yes, I love how you kind of challenge that thought. I've had conversations like that as well. Not just about our homes, but I actually had an exchange like that about slow living recently. And it's interesting because I think it has a lot to do with, I think contentment has a lot to do with our mindset. I mean, it's not something that just naturally happens for most of us. It's something that we really need to choose and take hold of for ourselves. So when it comes to our physical spaces, kind of like a synonym for contentment is just like feeling satisfaction or happiness with an area. So just in case the word contentment just feels like, what does that even mean, to really take hold of that? Um, but but when it comes to feeling satisfaction with our homes, I think it's so hard because a couple of things. First of all, this situation we often find ourselves in is that our spaces are so cluttered up with stuff that we just look around and feel overwhelmed instead of satisfied or happy or peaceful. But yet, that's what we want. We want our homes to be this place that is a beautiful, peaceful, like even kind of like an oasis, or a place where we can come and just unwind and be with the people that we love.
A sanctuary.
Yes, I love that word. And so we have this cluttered mess that we've kind of built up over time, but we want a sanctuary, and it's hard to find, like, how do we actually get that? So I think that's one reason. But even if we don't have a cluttered mess in our homes, or even if we still do, like, I think that contentment is about making steps towards maybe what we want, or making steps towards what would be the best version of our homes, but finding satisfaction in the now anyways. And I think a big thing that holds us back from that is comparison. And especially when it comes to like our current culture and social media, and the fact that we can see these beautiful, tidy, perfect homes that look like they must be somehow clean all day long. And then we think to ourselves how like our home is not enough because it doesn't even look anything like that. And we're also bombarded by the message that we should be upgrading and we should be going bigger and better, and that's what we're supposed to do. So I think we have to really question that message. We have to really look at how much we're comparing our homes to others, because when it comes down to it, it's not about perfection. It's not really about, I mean, there's good in having like beauty, and we can work towards a beautiful home that reflects us personally. But comparison is, even if we had like our perfect dream home, we would still, if we let ourselves get into that comparison, we would still feel discontent because someone else's home is still going to always look better.
Yeah, it's like a perfect storm of the grass is always greener with unrealistic expectations with consumerism. And where all of those meet creates this inability to be in that state of mind of contentment. And it really is a mindset. I mean, if we're talking like my deck in that example I gave, on my deck the only objects on my deck are literally a hammock and a table, because we often eat dinner out on the deck during the warm months, and then the hammock where I lay and read, and that's it. So like no outdoor rug, no like fancy fire pit up there, no planter boxes, like
Right.
nothing. And when I look at all of the, fancy deck spaces on Instagram or on, social media or on TV, I honestly don't long to have more objects on my deck. Like I feel, there's that satisfaction curve, right? Where the ideal is that enough point, and my deck feels like that enough point for me. But that's really like a mindset and a choice that you can take that approach with all these different areas of your home.
Yeah, I love that. I have one of my happy spaces is kind of just like my dining room table. And it's funny because my dining room is so small, and it's literally just a table and honestly a changing table that we've turned into a coffee cart. And we keep it really minimal in there. Like one day I'll probably add some wall art or something. But right now I don't look at other people's dining rooms and think like, wow. I mean, I can appreciate their beauty of like a well curated home, but I don't think to myself, I wish mine looked that way, or I wish I had a different table. I can think through like, wow, in the future, if we expand our kitchen, because it's super tiny right now, maybe we would have a table that's a little boost. Like I think through those things, but I don't let myself get to that point where I'm feeling like until then I can't be happy with this space, when it's one of the happiest spaces in my home because we share meals together there, and I spend breakfast just having fun with my toddler at our table. So I think that's kind of the balance we have to strike, and it is hard to strike whenever we are constantly looking at other people's homes or just other people's lives in general.
I love that. And I mean, it really is like there is a lot about space and about your home that is within your control. So say you have like long-term intentions and goals of moving into a different space, but for this season, this home is where you are. There is so much that is absolutely within your control. And, a really big part of making a space reflect you and your values and the state in which you're comfortable is just that process of curation. It's mostly letting stuff go as opposed to buying new stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let's talk about time. There's feeling content with where you are physically, but there's also feeling content with where you are in time. I'm talking about a contentment being in your present season of life. We just talked about where you are, and this is when you are. It can be hard to stay content in your present season, especially when you're elbow deep in toddler tantrums, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So I have one daughter. She is almost 2, like I said, and right now we're kind of getting to that space where she's very vocal about what she wants. She's learning to communicate, which is amazing, and I love it. But of course, sometimes that can look like a struggle, and it can look like a tantrum. And I think that there was a point where when that all started, which really it's almost, I feel like it's been going on for a year now. I mean, she's started trying to communicate and getting frustrated with that. And, in some ways it's gotten better. In some ways she's just more vocal about what she wants. But almost a year now that I've kind of lived through that hard place in parenting where there is this disconnection with communication. And I think that it's been easy for me to think about like I don't know, future seasons where it's going to be so much better when we can actually communicate and when she can tell me exactly what she wants, and maybe even when I just know her better and I can know exactly what she wants. Or, maybe that's someone that's looking into a future season of thinking like when my kids go off to school or something, I will feel like I'll have all this free time. Or whenever we look to the past. I know that I had this moment in very early motherhood where I almost felt like, we feel like our lives changed so much. And I've heard someone describe it as like kind of you have this moment of mourning your past life. And if we let ourselves live in that space where we are either looking to the past and thinking like those were the good old days, or looking to the future and thinking like things will be better when, like, of course we are going to find ourselves in this discontentment. And I just don't know, it's easy to fall into that, but like why do we live with that? Why do we live like that when like this is our life and we don't get another chance? And I think the key to getting present in this current season, in this short small season where our kids are small and our kids are toddlers, or wherever, whatever season you're in, like it's very short. Even if it feels long, it's very short. And for me, I just have to think to myself, like, there's so much joy in parenting a toddler, and if I wouldn't like choose contentment in these days, I'd be missing so much of it. She is so much fun. I mean, she's hard sometimes, and there's some weeks where I feel myself saying that more often than not, just saying like, this has been a hard week. She's been really hard this week. And then the next week I'm like, she's amazing. Like, she's such a good child. And she is I hate to define it like that because, good is whatever, but she's an easy child, I should say. Like, she's really, some weeks I'm saying she's easy, other weeks I'm saying she's hard. And I think what we have to do, in those hard moments is accept that this is where we are, whether it's a toddler or, a teenager. This is what season of motherhood that we're in, and it's precious. And the way that we react and the way that we live in this season and the way that we maybe like accept our current situation in this current season is going to reflect back on our children. It's going to reflect in their happiness or in the way that they are feeling loved. And I think the key is to just like look at the good that's happening, even in the midst of a tantrum. Like, what good is happening right there, or what good things can happen from that? Like, for me, I've learned so much through tantrums that I've learned that most of the time, well, 100% of the time, it's because she's just tired or hungry, or she needs something that I'm not giving her in that moment. And it's not to blame myself, but it's just like, okay, whatever we're doing, if we're out somewhere, like, this is over. We need to go home so that she can have her needs met. And it's just like, it's a learning process. So I think if we look at things, as they truly are, like, and not let the expectations of our culture seep in and think like, oh man, toddlerhood is hard, and mothering a toddler is so hard, and why can't my child just do the things I want them to do? Instead of falling into that, just thinking like, okay, my tantrums happen because this, and this. How can I respond in this way? This is the season I'm currently in. I'm called to it. How can I love this season? And I think we think through that.
What a gift to get to be here with my child through their hard moments. Like, I would often say like little mantras about that in those moments to get connected more with the gratitude and the contentment of this is exactly where I choose to be. And I have to say, standing on the other side of the season you're currently in, I am reaping such a rewarding sense of peace from having done the work and been intentionally committed to contentment in the previous season. When I was having babies, I was all in, like soaking up every moment and patiently drinking it up into every pore of my soul. Then when I was chasing littles, same thing. I sometimes had that mantra in my head, this is exactly where I want to be. And now that my kids are 13, 10, and 7, I look back on those years with such fondness, but I also don't at all feel like I wish I was there again so I could just get one more nursing session or one more baby wearing cuddle. because I feel like I got them all. Like I took full advantage of every single moment. And now I am so ready and content to be right here with my big kids. And I'm focused on soaking all of this in as we travel and kid swap and donate toys. And I'm just reveling in the beauty of this present season.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that we hear that phrase a lot, right? Like one day you'll miss this. And how do we how do we not have to feel that feeling? And it's not that maybe we'd never miss like, oh, a baby snuggle, but just like that I am going to fully, like you said, fully soak all of this in. And I know some people will say like, oh, don't tell me to savor the moment because this is hard, but like, no, do savor the moment because this is your life, and like your children are precious, and it's allowed to be hard. Like it's okay that life is hard right now, or that this moment is hard. It's okay. Like live there, like feel that hard moment, and then move forward. Like what can you do to learn in that moment, and what can you do to be with your child, and then like also fully savor the good moments, because I mean there are so many more good moments than there are hard moments, even with a toddler.
Yeah, and hard and good are not mutually exclusive. Like I can, even in
Yes.
my hardest moments, I can still savor being there. You can still, even in that really hard space, be all in that moment. You know, it's
Yes.
about like, this is exactly where I am meant to be in this moment. I am so grateful that I get to be here for this moment, and that I get to have this moment, and that I get to grow through these hard moments, as opposed to wishing that you could fast forward and be in a different season of life.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I know I experience that a lot still because my daughter's almost 2 and I'm still nursing her. And there are times where she wakes up at maybe like 5 in the morning. And that's pretty close to my wake up time. But sometimes I'm just so tired. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this again. And every time though, I just, that's like my first wake up thought, like in my tired state. But then as soon as I kind of really feel, consciousness, I'm like, I love that I still get to hold her this close. Like, I've been getting to do this for almost 2 years now, and it's just such a precious thing. So I think it's just about flipping our mindset. And another thing too, that I think when we do have toddlers, we have to also, be honest with the fact that, and I have to be honest with the fact that it is very demanding, like physically and on our time. And so I think something important too is to reflect and be honest with what does feel hard, and not necessarily like, how can I make this easier, but how can I also make sure I'm taking care of myself? And I think that one of the things that makes us discontent in our present seasons, or at least one of the things that maybe we can feel is hardest about early parenthood, is just that we don't have time for ourselves. But I want to challenge that, and I always tell people that, like, if you don't have time for yourselves, then you need to find it, like, and not find it because you can't find it. You're not going to go like looking for it and it's just going to pop up somewhere. Like,
You
need
have to make it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Try switching I can't to I choose to, or I don't have time to that's not my priority, or I choose not to. There's that time scarcity mindset that I often come up against when I'm like doing coaching with parents who have young children, and I just try to remind them, like, you have the exact same amount of time you had before kids. Like, everyone has 24 hours in a day. So it's just about how do you meet your needs more efficiently. And I mean, I just did a whole episode on self-care, but breaking down that myth that self-care can only happen separate from your children, and really getting at what your actual unmet needs are. It's probably not what you think it is, and then find ways, with a little creativity to meet them better. But even with all of that, I mean, even if we're not talking about parenting stuff, like, when I was in grad school, like, I really had to work on the mindset of like not just trying, or college in general, just not like trying to wish that I was at the other end and had my diploma, but to really like be present in this special period of time. That's a season of life for me. Or like we lived in this rental house for like 5 years or something like that, and being intentional to not wish my way through, get not to have my attention and focus sucked into the future and miss the present of like wishing that we could own a house and we could do what we wanted to it, and like just to be present in time with where you are today.
Right, exactly.
Well, let's talk about people, because I want to talk about this one area of contentment that can be harder to face. Feeling content with, in true acceptance of the people in your life, is next level self-actualization.
Yes.
And in the context of parenting, it's a game changer. When we face a misalignment of the children we hoped to have with the children we actually have, who come with their own given spirit and cannot be parented into a different way of being, we are freed from our resentments to unconditionally love the children we actually do have. And this is true of all relationships. For example, if you can really hear and acknowledge the grief of your inner child, you can gain a sense of contentment with the parents you actually had, instead of being stuck in that unnamed grief, wishing these people are different than who they actually are. Now, I'm not talking about choosing to remain in connection with people who do not add to your peace and joy, or who do not help you to be your best self. I'm not even talking about forgiveness. I'm just talking about the contentment that can come from true radical acceptance, which also leads to clear, appropriate boundaries in all your relationships, because you're not stuck hoping someone will be different. And yourself, contentment with where and who you are in your evolution today, your body, your work, etc. So, Desirae, share with us a relationship in your life that has improved by leaning into contentment.
Yeah, I think that I loved this question when you talked to me about it before we got to sit down and chat, because it really made me think. And I think that it has helped kind of all of my relationships in a way. I don't know that I haven't gotten to the point, to working on like a lot of specific relationships, but one that it's helped more than, like, I would say one that I've worked on most with contentment is my relationship with my daughter. And I kind of talked about this already a little bit, but I've realized that I think once she, when she was a baby, like all I cared about was caring for her and being her caretaker. And I never cared about really, I didn't have much insecurity in being seen out in public with her freaking out. Like, I didn't really care. She's a baby. Like, most people are understanding of a baby that doesn't have their needs met and therefore is crying. Mm-hmm. When she became a toddler, I started to have this insecurity and this feeling whenever we were out and about and she would maybe, do something that I didn't think someone would think well of, or she would have a misbehavior, I guess.
Fearing perceived judgment.
Right, exactly. So that I struggled with that in the very early toddler phase. Like, maybe as it might have been before she turned 1, I don't even know, but it was whenever and it was maybe for a couple of months, I had to really work through it. And when I started I think it's when what happened was I started finding contentment with myself. And that is where it all started. I discovered the Enneagram, which I know is kind of like a buzzword right now, but it really helped me understand who I am. And are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm a 9, and I didn't like that when I first discovered it, and that was already a kind of a red flag with that's not good that I didn't like that. But as soon as I started reading through that and realizing who I was, I started to realize that this is true of everyone around me, that everyone is kind of learning who they are and discovering themselves. And everyone is fighting against that. And everyone has insecurities. And so I had to dig through these insecurities that I had as a mother and as a new mom, and thinking that for some reason I've thought that everyone around me would judge me because I'm a new mom, and apparently I have no clue what I'm doing because my toddler is crying about something or is having a tantrum. So what's kind of happened through that is that I became a lot more content with myself through this kind of self-discovery that I dug into. And I realized that, I am the best mother for her because I am her mother. And I do the best that I can to be the best mother for her. And so what really clicked in my mind with that was that she's doing the best that she can as well. And that for some reason our culture puts these pressures on our children that no matter what age they are, they're expected to act a certain way even when they're super young. And even so that, a lot of these pressures are really unwarranted and they don't make sense developmentally. And
childism.
Yes, exactly. And so that has freed me a lot, but it has also helped our relationship so much because now I know that, I am her anchor. She looks to me for guidance. And if I cannot be content with myself and also be content and accept her just as she is, then what is that going to do to our relationship in the long term? And so it helped me kind of realize she doesn't really need to be fitting into any mold. She needs to just be like fully herself, and I need to help her know that that's okay. I need to show her that that's a good thing in the long, like as she grows up through every season, through every stage. And I think kind of digging into my own self and my own imperfections has helped with contentment in every relationship, because I'm easily able to remind myself that like other people are having to find contentment with me as well. Like, you know what I mean? It's not just about me being like, oh, I wish this person would act this way instead, or oh, I wish my husband would do this. Like, it's not just about that. Other people are finding contentment, or they need to work on contentment with me as well, because I have imperfections. I'm not living up to their expectations. Like, we all are working through that. So I hope that makes sense. It's something I'm still definitely working through.
Yes, it absolutely makes sense. I mean, I try to extend those like intentional living, minimalist, let go of all that's not serving you to make space for what does, principles onto relationships as well, onto people, which I think that a lot of people stop short of that. And I just want to encourage people to bring that into the people space, and that can be really helpful in getting more contentment in your relationships. Like, some relationships might not serve you, and that's okay to let them go, and to do the work on the things that you can control, but to also accept the things that you can't. And there's a lot of contentment that comes from that, especially with our kids, but other relationships too.
Yeah, and I think contentment also, like, it's so important to talk about relationships, because if we are truly content with our lives in general, I think then we are probably leaning into people, because people are the most, and I think the most important thing. Like, that's what a lot of us would say, like, if we're listing our important things, like, our family is going to be in the top, so, or like maybe not just family, but our kids and other people, relationships in general. So it's important to talk about that, because if we're just leaving that out, then how are we finding, we can't just find contentment like with our homes just by saying like, oh, I'm looking at my desk, right? Like, okay, my desk is good enough just as it is. Like, it's not just about like that. It's about, okay, what goes on in this house? What goes on in this life? And I can be content with it because I'm really like leaning into those things. Like that's where the good stuff is when we're working on relationships, and when we're caring for our people, and when we're just having like experiences together. I think we can find contentment more easily when we're focused on and leaning into those things.
I completely agree. When you can get to that place of like, I am enough, and if you are enough, then you extend that to those other important relationships too. And it's like people and experiences over things.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, one common thief of contentment that we already touched on a little bit is comparison. What advice do you have for us when inspiration turns into discontentment?
Yes, that's such a good question because it's so prevalent right now. I mean, we have Pinterest and we have Instagram, and I enjoy being on Instagram. I enjoy connecting with people there. I enjoy sharing my writing there, but it can also be a harmful place if we let it be, because there's lots of noise and there's lots of places that we can compare ourselves. And I think the best way to really combat that is to just shut it down for a little bit. I I've been kind of looking at this a lot lately and looking at like what boundaries are important for me when it comes to, gaining inspiration or just finding myself on these spaces where I know that and you probably see this as well. There's like a whole minimalism community on Instagram, and it's a really great place because you can connect with other people who are like-minded. And if you're kind of, finding, or if you're going after a goal of some sort, even like in the debt-free community, it's a really great place to find other like-minded people and see other people reaching their goals. But where are our boundaries in this place? Because at the same time, like, how do we don't want to live in that space where it's not real life necessarily. Like it's not our real lives. There's
It's
people right in front of
curated.
us. Right. And so I think shutting out the noise is important and finding a way to do that actually, I don't know. I talked about this a lot lately, or I talked about this with some friends lately, of just I've taken social media breaks myself because of this comparison problem. And I took one probably back in the fall where I took a few weeks away from social media. And that was really great. But I feel like it taught me, how to just be a person apart from social media rather than teaching me how to use it well. So, and how to use it purposefully. So now I've been trying to take kind of like a 24-hour break just to kind of, I don't know, reset and remind myself of my purpose in those spaces where either I'm giving inspiration or finding inspiration, and then also finding boundaries. Like I'm not meaning to talk only about social media, but I think that's a big place we all find inspiration right now. And I think that this idea of shut out the noise, it's good, but it also, I think it can just feel like, okay, we're shutting out the noise. It's like almost running away from the fact that, like, why is this inspiration turning into discontentment? Instead, how can I build boundaries when I start to feel that I am shutting it off temporarily and dealing with myself, So not that you need social media or that people need it, like it's just that's what's been working for me because I use it as a way to connect with, listeners to the podcast. I can't necessarily just say like forget you social media. So I've kind of realized that, if this is a place that I enjoy being, then how do I do it in a way that is not making me become discontent in the end? And I think that another way is to just like, maybe we shut out the noise temporarily and then we start to just, remind ourselves of all the good in our own lives. And that's a huge part of contentment. I've talked about contentment a lot lately on my podcast. And what I kept coming back to is this idea of gratitude. And that's just key when it comes to comparison, is we have to get grateful for what's around us, and therefore like that comparison isn't gonna hit us as deep because we're already grateful. We're already saying that what is around us, what we have is enough, and we don't have to kind of reach for that comparison. And another thing that I talk about, another thing that I've kind of come across as I've been diving into this idea of contentment is the idea of community. And in those spaces where there is community, like how can we, when we're feeling that sense of comparison, how can we cheer someone on instead? And how can we be an encourager or be a cheerleader in that area when we're feeling that discontentment. Like, even if we don't feel like it, even if it's, I think sometimes it feels more personal, like if it's with someone in our everyday lives, like if it's a sibling that just got this big job promotion and, they're always the one who gets all the praise or something. I don't know, like those feelings of just like, nobody sees what I'm doing. Like, in that moment, even if you don't feel it, like, congratulate them or
Fake it till you make it.
yes, exactly, like go out of your way for it until it like just starts to change your heart a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like the research shows that if you don't feel happy but you smile, like then you actually do get happier. There is definitely some validity to that. Yes, I mean, stop scrolling is sort of like the thing that a lot of people say if you're feeling overwhelmed by comparison, and that's true. Like, you can like step away and take a break and put the phone down, but also you can like bring those strands of intentionality and minimalism into social media, which is really a common place for comparison to take hold, by just like, you can unfollow whoever
Yes,
any account you want. Like, so if you find an account that is beautiful and the person is lovely, but every time you see their posts, it like triggers something in you that you don't like, then unfollow them. I think through social media, we are able to nurture all kinds of relationships, and that's why I enjoy it. But it's also not the same necessarily as an in-person relationship. So people are very hesitant to unfollow, just like they're hesitant, to get rid of objects in their houses, I suppose. But really to be okay with letting things go that aren't adding to your peace and joy, and that includes in the social media department.
Yes, unfollowing is definitely good. I know that this was even really before I dove into minimalism, and I realized like that I was following a lot of fashion bloggers, and even before minimalism came into my life, I was like, this is making me want to buy clothes all the time, and I just don't have the money for that. Even when I was like, sure, fill up my closet, back before minimalism, I was like, I have to really purge my who I'm following, and I think that's okay because, we change, and over time, like our following count has built up just out of what we were interested in. Mm-hmm. Maybe before your wedding, you were interested in, losing weight. And now that is just triggering you. Like when you see all these people that you followed years ago, and you need to unfollow them because you need to get content with who you are and love yourself for who you are. And you don't need to be seeing people in bikinis, So like, I think that can definitely, it's social, like we change, but it's not like our social media following changes with us, like unless we click
mine does.
Yes, exactly. Unfollow and then it will.
Yeah, the people that I follow definitely tend to, like in any given season of life, definitely tend to reflect the thing that I'm most working on. And that's very intentional. Like I try to, like you are a reflection of like the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I feel like there's a certain element of that you can extend to social media too. Like the people that I'm following, the content that I am seeing and digesting and being inspired by and influenced by, like I want that to be intentional, and I want to surround myself in any given season with the people who I want to be, not that I necessarily want to be more like, but that I want to, to that like issue that I'm inspired by and working on. Like the last like year or so, I've really been diving deep into all things personal finance. So like I'm following a bunch of people who are, in the debt-free community and in the FIRE community. And I'm finding that really inspiring. Whereas like in a season, in seasons past, I may have followed a bunch of people who were all about home birth or who were all about, what I mean? Like whatever issue, like I'm really learning all about and feeling super passionate about, like I'll follow a bunch of people like that who can help me to grow and inspire me to think about the issue in new ways. And then it's okay if my focus moves on, evolves into something else. I want the content that I'm digesting to evolve with it, just like the books I'm reading will evolve with it. Like, to be honest, I'm really not reading books about breastfeeding anymore. Whereas in the previous seasons, I've read all the books about breastfeeding. Like right now, I'm reading books about other things, and I'm writing about other things. And so I try to have the content that's inspiring me reflect the ways in which I'm trying to grow myself and the intentional direction in which I'm trying to evolve. And I also find it's helpful to have like somewhat of a container or boundary for it. For example, like, you know, we talk about with the house, it can be helpful to have a boundary. Like this is like the shelf for cups. So like I'm not going to have more cups than can fit on this shelf. Or like with kids, like this is the basket for stuffed animals. Like if you want to bring a new one in, an old one has to come out. This is the space for stuffed animals. And I even extend that to like social media. Like I try to, and I'm a little bit over right now, and it's actually on my list to go down and prune a little bit. I won't follow more than 500 accounts. So like 500 accounts is like my absolute cap. I won't follow more than that. And so if I start to add people like based around like some new interest that I'm having, I have to let go of some other accounts. And that helps me to stay accountable to that intentionality piece.
Right. That's so good. It's like, I mean, it's a form of clutter. It's like it can
Yes.
give us a feeling of mental clutter. It's like digital clutter. And it's not mean to unfollow someone.
No.
Like even if you were doing it with like a mean heart, like it's not going to like it's not a mean thing to do. It might sound like it is. I feel like it has a negative connotation, but it's okay. Like
Yes.
everyone's going to be okay.
Desiree and I officially give you permission.
Exactly.
Okay, well, you mentioned gratitude, and one of the 12 secrets to keep calm, cool, and connected that you get when you sign up at sageparenting.com is gratitude. I recommend keeping a bedside journal and at bedtime jotting down 3 things that you were grateful for that day. And one of the best parts of this practice is that you then spend your day looking for those 3 things to write down that night. So it shifts your whole focus away from thieves of peace and joy, like comparison, and towards harbingers of peace and joy, like gratitude and contentment. Gratitude can be an emotional compass, reminding you where to put your focus. And we all know that what you water grows, right? So when you lean into those points of gratitude, they grow. I'm hoping you can describe for us, Desiree, how gratitude has been essential for you.
Yes, absolutely. So gratitude has been huge for me. I think that this is something that I started a long time ago, really long before minimalism, and it probably is something that helped me be open to the idea of letting go of things. Um, for what it looks like for me, I kind of like what you described, just started with intentionally listing things I was grateful for, and now I do this in the morning. Because I wake up super early and I enjoy that. So it's just something that's when I kind of have the time for it, and I've kind of made the time for it. And over time, it's really just kind of seeped into part of my life. So it's not, I still do list the things in the morning, because it's part of my routine, but at the same time, it's just seeped into who I am. And what it's really done for me is it's helped me combat not positive, it's helped me combat a negative mindset. It's helped me combat like complaining and
Yeah.
anxiety that I've struggled with for years, and not saying that it can completely, solve that problem if you have clinical anxiety, but for me it has really helped, and it's really helped me when I'm feeling overwhelmed. So what it looks like at this point is like I said, I list it in the morning, but then throughout the day when I am finding myself, because I tend, a lot of people will tell me like, you're so positive, you're so happy all the time. But it's funny because if you talk to the people who know me the deepest, they'll tell you that I tend to negativity when I'm not, mentally healthy. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can fall into that really easily, and I can spiral downward. So this has been a way for me to, in those moments, catch myself before I spiral. In the moments where, it is quote unquote hard, I'm dealing with a hard moment or a hard day, especially if I'm just waking up feeling, I don't know, not full of energy, and and I'm like, okay, I have to do like a million things at once somehow. And right now I feel like my life is about like how changing seasons of like how do I shower? Like how
Yeah.
at one point it worked to do it during a nap time, and now I'm working during nap time, and soon there won't be a nap time. So
Yep.
it's just like all of these things can get to me, but in those moments of like that negativity that comes up that just ultimately will come up in my brain, I can hold on to gratitude. And for me, it looks like a quick, like literally 30-second prayer, or just like, it doesn't have to be a prayer. It's just like, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm grateful for this instead. Or I look to something else that I'm grateful for. Like maybe I'm not grateful for that I can't get a shower right now, but I'm grateful that I can get a shower later. I'm grateful that I get to have this moment. Like it doesn't have to be about the same thing. Like you don't have to necessarily turn around that same thing that's stressing you out and find gratitude in that. Like you can, but you can also just lean on something else you're grateful for. Like I'm just grateful for like my daughter's like super loud like screaming giggle. I love it so much. Like that kind of thing, and it just snaps me out of that mindset.
Yeah.
Keeps me going in my day. So
I'm grateful for tacos. I'm so grateful that I get to live in a world that has tacos in it.
exactly.
Yes, gratitude really is like my emotional compass. So if I feel the emotional center of my brain start to swirl around in a direction that I don't like, gratitude really helps me focus that emotional energy back in the direction that I want it to go. And it's a practice. Like at first, with all of the things I talk about on this podcast, they are practices. So when you first start doing them, they're going to feel really hard and unnatural and awkward, and it's going to take a lot of energy. And then the more you do it, the easier and more natural it becomes until it really is just second nature for you.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning too, it can be like, I don't know, you could, if you're already feeling like resentful towards something that day, you could just like want to brush it off and say like the big things. Like even if you're feeling resentful, you might feel like, okay, I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful that I have a house over my head. Like, you might want to just list those big things. And those are okay to list too, like if that's the only thing you can think of. But I always encourage people to get a little bit more specific, because
Yes.
if we're not listing, we don't want to list like the same things day after day, even if you are grateful for those same things. But it's when we look for those like tiny in the moment things that it can really change our perspective on everything.
I remember taking those like 5-minute showers with my baby laying on like a blanket right outside of the shower, and the shower curtain like wide open, and having to like sing to my baby while I'm trying to get clean real quick. And my like gratitude was, I am so grateful for hot water. Like,
Oh, yes.
I was so grateful for hot water. Like I just turned up really hot because the curtain's wide open, so there's no like steam factor, Like
Yeah.
just to get like real specific is definitely helpful.
Exactly.
Okay, now if I was listening to this conversation, I might be wary of this whole contentment thing, because contentment can slide into complacency, but the two are not the same thing. I am a very driven person, highly motivated to grow and evolve and learn and design my lifestyle with increasing intentionality. And I am content with who and where I am today. The two are not mutually exclusive. It's the difference between I am whole and happy now, and I'm excited to continue consciously expanding through all the seasons I am gifted, and I hate myself and my life sucks and I'm desperate to get out of here. So running from is not the same as running toward. Feeling content with where I am allows me to gaze forward within a framework of abundance, whereas complacency gives me an excuse to stay in a framework of good enough. Can you speak to your experience of the difference between complacency and contentment?
Yes. So complacency, just to kind of like give it a definition, is that uncritical satisfaction with yourself. I looked it up. I like definitions.
Me too.
And it's just like an uncritical satisfaction with yourself, or like maybe an uncritical satisfaction with your season of life. So there is this feeling of satisfaction, I guess, with complacency, but it's not necessarily coupled with the joy and happiness that you get when you really have contentment in your life. So
It's
it's
not a
almost
fulfilling satisfaction.
right. It's like I'm just fine if I stay right here. And I'm choosing that because it's the easiest option. I think that's what complacency really is it's kind of just easy to decide to stay right here. And even if I'm not necessarily feeling like this is my best option. And so the way that I can think back to a very specific time in my life where I felt this way. And it was almost like I was battling it in a way the whole time. And that's when I was a public school teacher. It was a job that was completely just not for me in every single way. I mean, I loved kids, and I was a middle school teacher, and I just love that age of kids. And even now I'm like sometimes like, oh, I just like I would love to see where my students are now. I'd love to just like still know them, like that's
Yeah.
not that wasn't the problem. It was everything else about the public school system, and it was just anxiety on me, everything. So what happened in that season was I stayed there for 4 years, which might not seem like a lot for some people, but for me that was a lot of time to be severely anxious and kind of miserable.
Yeah.
But I also found myself in this place where, like, okay, and which I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to, is like, this is just what you do. Like, you have a 9 to 5 or whatever, school year job or whatever it looks like for you. And this is just what you're supposed to do. So if this is what I'm supposed to do, then I'm just going to have to, do my best to survive it so then I can actually live on the weekends, or I can actually live in the summer whenever school is out. And so there were times during that season where I was like, I can't do this anymore. My life should be like, I'm meant to be happy. Like, I can't be happy here, and like I deserve happiness. So why am I doing this? But then like complacency really came in, because it's like, this is easy. This is a full-time paycheck. Well, it's not public school teaching is not easy in any way. So,
Yes.
but this is a paycheck, so it's comfortable. I should say it's comfortable, and that's just how I'm gonna live. So I think that hopefully that's an example, or maybe like someone can relate to feeling complacency in a way where we're just stuck in comfort, because it feels like it's not even possible to reach outside of that. It feels like it's not even possible to move in a different direction and find the life we would be more content and happier in. So
Yes.
if contentment
Complacency is like, it's fine, it's good enough, it's staying in bed with the devil, It's
Yes.
it really, the word that really helps me conceptualize it is inertia. Like, when you stay in complacency, you are just going along with the inertia of your life as it is. Whereas, being content is not about the path of least resistance. It's about making very intentional choices and the peace and fulfillment and meaning that comes from that.
Right. And it's not natural. Like, I feel like it's not something that we can just go about our day to day unintentionally and just somehow we're going to stumble into contentment. It's like, it's definitely intentional decisions to be grateful, intentional decisions to believe that, there is abundance available to us. It's an intentional decision to choose joy. And when we believe that we are enough, first of all, believing that we are enough means that we deserve a better life than whatever complacency is going to give us. Or we believe that we deserve happiness and joy. So when we believe that we're enough, and we also want to continually just work to this best version of what our lives and our season can be, then that's what can help us get content in our everyday. And it doesn't mean that we're resistant to change. It means that we're literally embracing change and looking for the best way to change and finding satisfaction, within the season while it changes or while we're working towards change. And complacency is easy. Complacency is where I think, the majority of our American population, and maybe, other first world countries, like, where we where we find ourselves, because it's easy to just get that, come in that comfortable place and not reach for more, because it just feels like, at least we have stability. Like
Yeah.
that's all there is, right? We don't know, but that's just not true. Like we there's abundance available to us, and we just have to intentionally choose to believe that and intentionally work towards it.
Yeah, it can take a jolt to get out of inertia. Like when you're stuck in inertia, it does take a jolt to get out of it. But once you do enact that jolt to get out of that inertia and start making more conscious choices and start aligning your life with your values, it's so, so worth it, I promise.
Yes, it truly is.
Well, let's move into our deep dive. The show notes can be found at sageparenting.com/podcast31, where you can also subscribe and get future show notes sent right to your inbox. So, Desirae, what are your favorite resources for people to dive deeper into this topic? And I'm just going to say right off the bat, we're going to link to the Minimalish podcast, which I enjoy, and Desiree's Instagram account, which I know you will all enjoy following as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So those are two great places to find me and my favorite places to be. I have a free resource that kind of just takes you through the step-by-step of what I believe has really changed me, and that is kind of that physical minimalism, the decluttering, and then kind of looking at minimalism for your time, minimalism for your days, and then the third part is that minimalism for your mindset. So that's a free guide that I offer, and you can find that at DesiraeEndres.com/maketheroom.
Excellent. And I'll also put a link to the minimalism documentary, because you said that was pivotal on your journey.
Yes.
Have there been any other books or documentaries or people who've been really inspiring along the way for you?
Yes. Well, I love your podcast, and you've been inspired.
Thank
I
you.
have to say that. It's so true. And some other things that have really kind of helped, I think, both my husband and I, because we've really been in this together. It's been really fun that for him, and then also for me, because he finally convinced me into it, is Joshua Becker. Some of the things my husband would say that he was reading from him, I was like, no, that's too much for me, like clearing off the counter completely. But his books have been really awesome, and I think they're very step by step in a lot of ways. So that's been really great. And then something that really helped with minimalism with my mindset was the book Chasing Slow by Erin Lochner, and I love her. I love following along with her on social media as well. So she's been really inspirational to me.
I have not read that one yet, so I will add that one to my reading list.
It's really beautiful. It's kind of like a memoir style, but also has step by step, and that's kind of my favorite type of book to read. So I kind of just fell into it and then really discovered this whole slow living movement, and yeah, I love it.
Desirae, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing a conversation with me today. I really appreciate you giving us some of your time and some of your narrative, as you said you like to see in those books. Thank you for giving us some of that in today's episode.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to chat with you.